And here we are again, folks. Good afternoon, and welcome, all you Santa Cruz Voice listeners, and welcome to the Freedom Forum, where you can listen and be heard. I'm your host again, Jeff Bosshard, and again, with me is my friend and co-host, Vernon Bohr. Hello, Vernon.
Hello, Jeff.
We can hear you, and we hear some music in the background, which a little different from our usual bumper music. I hope you didn't mind a little bit, but it's a special day. We had to have something special going on because it's Cesar Chavez Day, and it's been actually a national holiday for many years now. It's a federal commemorative holiday that former President Barack Obama proclaimed in 2014 to be observed annually on March 31st, which falls on the birthday of the late Cesar Chavez, who died in April of 1993. He was a civil rights leader and labor activist who co-founded the United Farm Workers and dedicated his life to advocating for farm workers' rights, including fair wages and better working conditions for farm laborers. He played a key role in organizing nonviolent protests, strikes, and boycotts to improve the rights of agricultural workers, particularly in California and other farming regions. And we had workers coming up and down the state from Mexico and back to Mexico as the crops would come a time for working, and they needed some protection, and he helped get it for them. He's sort of like the Martin Luther King of the we'll say Hispanic population, perhaps, because farm workers mostly that. No official celebrations are planned as far as I can tell. Checking, for example, with the morning edition of San Jose Mercury and other news outlets. We're all apparently on our own. What form will your celebration take? This being a national holiday, you can plan on most federal, state, and local government offices to be closed, along with many banks, and including, of course, the post office. There'll be no mail delivery. So, Vernon, what is your aspect of how we should celebrate this man's birth and his existence as an important leader in our communities?
Maybe the way we did for Vietnam Veterans Day on Saturday. No one remembered it. I'm sorry.
Well, that's true in a way. I mean,
yeah.
People don't always remember these things.
Yeah, I don't. We could probably find something to honor and celebrate 365 days of the year, Jeff.
Yes, and the holidays seem to find us since our
Yes.
program's on Monday, and we had Washington's birthday and Martin Luther King Day and Christopher Columbus' birthday, whatever.
Yeah.
We do that.
So I'll honor and acknowledge him as, an effective activist. He did a lot of good work. A lot of people supported what he was up to, and he's owed his due. I don't know that he rises to the status of, let's say, Martin Luther King.
Yeah, but he tended to follow the same non-aggressive, peaceful protest types of operation rather than confrontation that we see so much violence of today, by the way. And we'll get to some of that because part of what we want to do today is cover some of the news items that are raging on the national scene, as they may and sometimes drastically do affect us right here in our state and our community. But we wanted to say that last week we added some previous discussions of the pros and cons of daylight savings time, the President's State of the Union address, and chaotic actions to tame the deep state. Today we're continuing discussion of the actions of Trump and reaction to Tesla, the element of hate. And in particular, I wanted to mention the movie October 8. October 8 is a documentary that's playing in theaters, probably for only a brief time, because it chronicles what happens the day after the October 7 attack by Hamas on the Israeli settlements in Gaza. And in particular, since it's a documentary, it just has all kinds of footage of different aspects of the protests that arose literally the next day, as if it was foreordained. They all knew they had to be out there the day after this Hamas attack, as if they knew that was coming. And these organizations embedded in all the major universities that had protests just kept continuing. But the one that caught my heart the hardest and evoked the most emotion in their support was the story of a student body president, not the president, the student council president at the University of Santa Cruz. It's the University of California at Santa Barbara. And she was a senior. And at the time this conflagration flared up, she suddenly found herself kind of at a loss with her fellow council members, even though she was the head of it. They discovered that she was Jewish and what that meant to her, and she discovered what it really meant to her, too. And the student council took a vote to oust her as their chairman. And they had to get 12 votes to do that, and they got 11. So she survived by one vote. And she looked back on it and saying, to think I worked with these same people, the same 11 people, for this whole year, and only now they turn on me because of my race or my selected religion or whatever the Jewish aspects of her existence was. And that's the shameful thing about anti-Semitism. And it is rife today. It still exists. It's still with us. And I don't know what we're going to do to confront it, except, for our part, to accept Israel as a state, to accept the Jewish people as people having rights, and those rights are carried with them wherever they go throughout our United States. Vernon, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I want to throw something else out. As you said, it all, how it's almost as if they knew the attack was going to take place. What I think a lot of people don't realize in this day and age, and this has been ongoing for a long time. Pat Buchanan, many of our listeners might not realize him, talked about culture wars back in the 80s. And throughout time, there have been ideological wars. And there is a site on the internet called Beautiful Trouble. And what its whole basis is how to organize these types of things so they look like they're organic. Let's not forget Rahm Emanuel saying, never let a crisis go to waste. And I think I know it was for a long time easy for me to not really see this because it seems so natural, but they're ready to go. We are in a cultural war, an ideological war. There's a man by the name of Tom Klingenstein has a five-part series, very five-minute pieces called The War. And as he said, wars where you have ideological bridges too far to gap. And I think there's a lot of that going on these days. Most of us Americans don't realize it, but this is a fight for the life and soul of America, in my opinion. And the same thing with this gal. She was going along, she's of Jewish heritage. Everything is fine, but this crisis had to be used to push forward an agenda, to agitate, to I don't know how to say it. What the ideologues use, they talk about demoralizing America, and what they really mean by that is splitting it up. And so that's what I feel about it. We need to all become aware of the fact that in many respects we are in a fight for our lives for the Western culture and civilization, with most of America not really concerned or interested in it. But as we know, all major revolutions really involve a very small percentage of the population. Typically under 10%. If it's violent, 1 to 3%. And if they're peaceful, like the Cesar Chavez movement, roughly up to 5%. So most of us are sitting in the middle with ideologues on both ends struggling for our hearts and minds. That was long as usual. Sorry about that, Jeff.
Not be sorry, because you're here for a purpose, and that's to fill in the gaps between my thinking about things and your knowledge of things. And when you mentioned there all the actions that take place with just a few people starting, I think of Che Guevara in Cuba.
Yeah.
I mean, they put his posters up. This is what we're supposed to do. Idealized by all sorts of college students. But the point I had was that these people are already there, ready to go. They're all loaded up in school, embedded in these situations over many years, just like the communists. China have embedded themselves in our schools and in our government. And I don't know what we do to get them out, but until they make trouble, I guess we don't see what their issues are and what they could do. We have to be wary, though.
Yeah, so I think that basically I was saying the same thing and filling in some details. People should go to this site if you got your internet. Beautiful Trouble. They've got tons and tons and tons of information on how to deal with this. In the '60s, it was Saul Alinsky, his 10 rules for radicals, and over the years, over the last 50, 60, 40. 60 years, 65 years. God, boy, is that a long time ago.
They go like our birthdays.
Rebellion, so to speak, has been fine-tuned. And what's interesting about that there, again, is for the most part, people I know want to go about their everyday business in life, living their lives, taking care of their families, contributing to their communities, going to their churches and stuff, and aren't really looking there. They're not looking. You could say how people are fighting for our hearts and minds. As a friend of mine used to say, whenever you see something, you should be asking yourself, is who's producing this information, and why is it being produced?
You sayeth the truth. The old Chinese proverb comes to mind, may you live in interesting times.
Yes.
That was meant not as a hopeful gesture, but as a curse. Interesting, meaning there'd be fomentation going on. And remember, our country was started with a revolution.
Sure.
But, as you now say, these 200 and some odd years later, we'd like to sort of sit back and enjoy the country that we built. In fact, Republicans were rejoicing on Election Day last year, that saying things like, we are getting our country back.
Yes.
In other words, it is a fight. The Democrats, on their part, seem to have fallen apart, and we should be concerned about that. They are disintegrating before our very eyes, and I think, like in any other situation, every entity, whether it's a school situation like you see Santa Barbara, or the whole United States, or the world, you need to have balance. You need to have something on both sides. Without the Democrats, for example, there's this new movement afoot to somehow get Donald Trump a third term in office, another 4 years. He's even said something about that. That's possible. That should not be something that party wishes for. We don't want to continue the bad precedent started by President Roosevelt, who took a fourth term, although he died right after getting elected. But he had a full 3 terms, and excused that on the basis he was managing a war and our recession and depression and all that.
Yeah,
but it doesn't ring true. We have interchangeable parts, and we can pass the baton to those that we've programmed to take over for us. I mean, each president appoints a vice president whom they assume will take over. Let's forget about the last one on the Democrat side. I don't think we actually got to where we could have someone who could take over, for someone who was even worse able than she was. But looks like Vice President Vance is probably going to be good stock, and he may be challenged in an election by, say, Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. And we'll have some real contest going on, and may the best person win. And that's the way we should have a new president each other term or so.
I heard an alternative to Trump running for another third term, and that was he's going to run on the ticket for vice president with Vance.
Vance would resign, and poof, there we are back in. But everyone would see that as transparent.
Well, yeah, I was seeing it as just if he did go along for the ride, that would drive people nuts enough as it was. As Vance continues in office 4 years with his vice president Trump, and that would be funny enough as it is, or tragic enough.
Well, the nice thing about looking to the future is Vance is young, and those who may be running against him are young. They could be building a dynasty that can grow as much as the Democrat Party grew over the years, ever since Wilson. And for good or bad, it would reflect the values, if there are still values, of the Republican Party, just as we're looking for the values of the Democrat Party, who seem to have lost their soul, partly when they basically kicked the deplorables out of their purview in the 2016 election. the poor working class, and that had been a mainstay of the Democrat Party. We represent the poor underclass people and the unions and so forth. Well, there they were for Trump to picking up, and he seemed to be picking up support also among the new imported people from outside the country. They're not all saying we're going to be Democrats. They're thinking, hey, this Trump guy's doing pretty good. I mean, that could happen. Who knows?
Jeff, I got a big Costco-size jug of Orville Redenbacher popcorn and my microwave popcorn popper, and I'm sitting back enjoying the whole thing, watching the system in action, we the people, those that we elect. You know, I wish that more of us would participate more in our government. It's hard to picture a government of, for, and by the people, where the people only participate on occasion, like once every year or something like that.
Yes, that would be ideal, that civic virtue would be embedded in all of us, and we would pay attention to all of the details of how government should be, looking at our Constitution, looking at the platforms of the parties, so much as they might be adhered to, and looking at our own values, whether they're coming from some church entity or from our schools or whatever. Our background does kind of dictate where we're headed. But you and I are kind of strange animals in that we have participated in politics. You as the husband of someone who was super active, and me as someone working with her who was somewhat less active. And the model might be Becky Steinbruner, who has the Community Matters program every Friday from 2 to 4, because she actually goes to the council meetings. She goes to the supervisors' chambers to their meetings. She goes to the fire board meetings. She knows all these people. She interviews them on the programs. And we have the latest issues, for example, like dealing with the batteries in a fire situation, like Moss Landing, and is proposed for our counties, too. So there we are.
You know, they had a great piece on 60 Minutes. Do you ever watch that?
60 Minutes has been hot and cold with Trump again. I saw they really burned him a couple of weeks ago, and then they come back. I didn't see it, but they had a nice little piece about what good he's doing, too.
Well, they had a little trashing of him, but they did a really good piece on the cleanup of the LA fires. And one of the problems that they're running into is in the cleanup, is cleaning up electric vehicles, and in part because we've got a lot of vehicles out there that are hybrids. And so it becomes very difficult in some respects to determine which vehicles they need to deal with as electric vehicles. And there was another interesting piece on there that we don't think of, is several people that were, there are houses around there that weren't burned, that survived the fire, and and everything inside is trashed and damaged in some way. The insurance companies are saying that they're not obligated to pay for the damage because it wasn't destroyed in the fire. They still have this stuff. It's very strange.
Well, that's not completely true. I've dealt with situations of fire and insurance. There are specialty firms that specialize in rebuilding the interiors that do get burned, because there's only so much timber that you can scrape away and still salvage, but some you have to replace and some you can just keep if the whole place hasn't burned down. And the ones that didn't burn were more or less the ones that kept a nice clear pyramid around their house, at least 5 feet, maybe 10. One I saw had all concrete, and the flames never got to the house.
It's called remediation. I know something about that because I had a house fire in 2016. So
I see.
I've seen them come in and clean it up.
Well, good folks, I have good news for you. I was able to log in to our telephone system, and we are able to receive calls on any subject, including, of course, the ones we're talking about, whether it be the Cesar Chavez celebrations or what's going on politically. We want your comments, want your questions. So dial in at 265-5050, and we'd be glad to have you. But here we are. We've frittered away a little bit of our time that we have to get down now to doing a commercial. I'll be happy to do that because, we have this studio here in the satellite building along with community TV, all getting along just fine. We have a lovely place to work out of, and people can rent spaces in this building too. And we are also a part of think first local. And we want people to listen first local to our local programs. So keep that in mind as we paw through some of these wonderful commercials that help support the program, and learn how you can do that. I'll tell you how later.
Some call us people of the book, and though we are of many races, ethnicities, and denominations, the Bible is what makes us one people. Join other people of the book Sunday afternoon for a non-denominational, no-holds-barred Bible question and answer challenge with Steve Gregg, host of the nationally syndicated Narrow Path radio show. It's free, so bring your friends and questions Sunday from 2 to 5 at the VFW Hall on 7th Avenue. Let's talk
about that first impression. Hi, this is Bettina McBee from Bettina's Buzz on SantaCruzVoice.com. And that first impression is my business card created by Dynamic Press. It is my favorite business card. It gets everybody's attention right away. If you want to make a good first impression, get your business cards and any printed media at Dynamic Press. And tell Angelo Bettina sent you.
Get ready to help build one of America's first local news and talk streaming radio stations. SantaCruzVoice.com. How do you do it? By donating either your time, money, or both. You'll be helping the Voice team construct a powerful infrastructure, one that we can all be proud of. To donate your time, your money, or both, go to SantaCruzVoice.com and click support. SantaCruzVoice.com and click support.
Get hooked up with affordable cannabis at your locally owned Hook Outlet, where everybody above the age of 21 can participate in the Hook's loyalty program. Each purchase earns you 2% store credit on your next purchase. Get hooked up with the best cannabis at affordable prices at the Hook Outlet in Capitola and Watsonville, or order online at hookoutlet.com. Get hooked up at the Hook.
And we are back on the Freedom Forum with your host, Jeff Bosshart, and co-host Vernon Bohr. And we're tearing into our list of the hot items politically nowadays. And the one that interested me the most out of all the ones that we have, and we could talk here all day about them, is the clash between our duly elected president, Mr. Trump, and the little district courts around the country. As hard as it is to believe, it could be that something like 366 district court judges are able to decide what the president can do. They all have to agree that he can do it, or one of them will say, no, you can't do this. So as Trump goes about trying to basically tear apart the deep state that he said he was going to do, there's a lot of resistance, partly because so many people got hurt by his actions. I mean, they are the sort of collateral damage that does happen. People that were receiving foreign aid, say in Africa, either that the workers there are getting paid, or they were paying people to get the kinds of medical help they needed. And keep in mind that USAID was started by President Kennedy with the idea in mind that, by spreading a little money around in different places around the world, we would more or less ingratiate ourselves with them, and they have a favorable outlook upon us and treat us nicely. We treat them nicely. We make them some comrades, some trading partners, and so forth. And that was a good idea. But what is being uncovered is that so many of these so-called programs are operated by NGOs, or non-governmental activities, that really are government activities because they are founded by our government and the funds raised by taxpayers. So before I get into that too much, Vernon, do you have any initial take on that?
Yeah, I do. It's an interesting one because, first of all, Trump has been in office 70 days now, 75. He's just started out, and one of the things that I've heard is that they're evaluating the situation, and do we really need the separate department for that? So you're right, people will be hurt. There's going to be collateral damage in any of this stuff, but I don't know that it's any greater than it has been in the past when presidents have shut out departments, gotten rid of public employees and that. What's different is the press is hammering on this. So I don't know how it's all going to work out. I saw a piece on 60 Minutes there again, did another piece, and it was how this has affected, what is it, broadcast radio, the...
NPR?
No, not that one. The one we have overseas.
America, Voice of America?
Voice of America. And I thought it was a good piece, and it made a lot of good points in terms of our ability to reach other people in other places. And so there again, like everyone else is, well, I don't know if it's a good idea to get rid of that, but behind it, we need to see how it's all going to shake out. For me, this is like if you were taking your blood pressure every 3 minutes and trying to decide whether you had high blood pressure, low blood pressure, or what. And there's a concerted effort to stay on Trump. Victor David Hanson, another one that you might be aware of. He's with the Hoover Institute out of Stanford and everything.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, and he did a very good piece this weekend regarding how there's this concentrated effort to just, if nothing more, to contain Trump for the 4 years he's in there while they figure out how to get him out of there, and in which case he won't be able to accomplish things that can make a difference.
Yeah, well, the containment started long before the election last year. All last year, the Democrats were building their entities, their teams of Democrat, of course, attorneys, high-ranking firms that were prepared to go anywhere and do anything to forum shop, as it were, to find at least one Democrat judge who would be willing to do what they asked him to do. And so they were at the ready, just like the Hamas supporters were. They're ready to go on day one. As soon as the events occurred, let's get them up and going. Some 69 suits have been filed so far, and that's just scratching the surface. But again, on the other hand, what Trump is doing is like working with a sledgehammer to try to break things up instead of going in there just piecemeal, a little bit at a time. And I think you're right. The Voice of America was very important, especially right after the end of World War II. When the Cold War was going on, we had an iron curtain, so to speak, and we could broadcast beyond that and reach out to the people, and they could hear what's going on from our perspective. And that's been happening for years. I mean, who would want that to go away? But the big question starts at the top of our list, that we have a problem with our budget. We have a situation where we spend more than we take in. So we either have to lower the spending or we have to take in more. Well, the answer for the Democrats is, well, we'll just tax the rich more. Well, as if that was a fair share. But on the other hand, we're trying to make taxes more equivalent, shall we say, more fair. You pay your fair share of whatever wealth you have. But the bottom line is we can't live within our means, then we can't live within our means. We have to change our living.
Yeah, and another point that's been brought up about that is that when you go into deficit spending, you can only do that up to the point that people are willing to continue to loan you money. And at this particular point, our debt to GDP ratio is about 126. It's over 100%. And our bond ratings have fallen. So it sounds nice to tax the rich. But here's the question. How much more? How much more? If people talk about the billionaires. If you took all the billionaire money away, you still wouldn't have enough to fund the U.S. for 1 year. It's not enough to make the total budget, and then you've lost them as a revenue source. So it sounds good, tax the rich, but by how much more?
And for how long? I mean, will the rich go away?
Yeah.
Stop being rich, stop being a source. You can only do so much to people before they rebel. And people like Mr. Musk, for example, might be rebelling by using some of his money to take down some of these people that want to spend. And he's promised to do that. So that's an effective thing. On the other hand, you have George Soros, who is all about using his money to corrupt society with getting DAs into office who will not prosecute people who commit crimes. And we, the people, don't want that, unless we're the people committing crimes. But here we have a situation, it's just unbelievable. Under our Constitution, we have three different entities: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial, the three equal branches of government. Now, no one Supreme Court justice can do anything against the president or against Congress. There has to be a majority of 5 of them acting together to get a consensus to make something happen. But here we have these individual judges in little courts all across the country whom our dear friend Senator Schumer from New York brags that he was putting these judges in place, 275 of them during the administration when the Democrats were in control, just for this contingency. So he'd have people already on hand to do their little damage. And they're even saying, Mr. Trump, you've got to turn that airplane around. You can't take those people to Venezuela. Well, does Mr. Trump have to ask him what he's allowed to eat for dinner? I don't know. How extreme can it get?
Well, there's another subtle problem in that, Jeff. And that is, and it's so clear when someone else mentioned this, and that is when you start acting that way, what you start to do is undermine the people's trust in the legal system. Because when people hear a judge says he has to do this, there's this connection in the mind, so to speak, that, Trump is blending the two powers, trying to take the power away from the judges, which is not true. As you pointed out, the Supreme Court needs, 6, 5? Yeah,
Majority.
Five. Yeah, the majority. And it sets up a condition. I'm going to back up. Politics is visceral. A long dead guy, Plato, made the comment that the average person knows little about what's going on. This is my paraphrasing. And though his heart may be sound, his head will be mushy when it comes to these issues. And therefore, politicians tell people what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. And there again, like I say, if you undermine the foundation and trust in the legal system, this country that's based on the rule of law is over.
Yeah, it would fall apart. I'm interrupting that thought that we both have to bring in a third person to this conversation who happens to be on the phone waiting. So I'm going to hear now if the person named Michael wishes to speak with us. Hello?
I am a person named Michael.
Well, then you'll do. We'll take any Michaels right now. We love having call-ins. We want to get the first one first, and you're it.
Good. Thank you very much. I just was listening to your conversation about taxes and budgets.
And you want to know about California?
Yes, and it just hit me this weekend. I met some very nice people, and they're getting the bleep out of California. And it's just so sad because they're just the kind of people you want to have in California.
One thing is people know what's going on.
Working people with income. And they're leaving. They're getting the heck out of Dodge, as have so many others.
Well, I hope they don't. Hope they don't take with them that disease. The disease that wants to tax everything and liberalize everything. They'll take the conservative philosophy with them, I suppose, and head for conservative territory, like Idaho, for example, or Texas, something like that. Is that about right?
Yes. Well, these folks are moving to Arizona, the Valley of the Sun. But it doesn't matter. They're heading anywhere they can. And I've been watching people move for a long time. But this one just caught me. I just thought, darn, this is really sad to lose these kind of people, family people, and they're leaving because their kids can't hang out here, are gone.
Jeff raised an interesting issue there. I remember going through Colorado after I got out of the Army in the early 70s. The only piece of graffiti I saw on a bathroom wall at a A&W root beer stand was "Don't Californicate Colorado," and yeah, Californians, many of them leaving California, are metastasized cancers. They want to go to places like Texas and Florida and change those places and make it more like California is right now, but not as bad. Colorado
Yes.
in the 70s was staunchly conservative and Republican, and now it's all blue now. So that's kind of my metaphor. Is these states need to watch out because
It's not all blue. Denver's blue.
Well, there's you look at the map of the
The
last
population. Yeah.
that population going down by district, not just by state. It's almost all red.
Yeah.
You get away from the left coast and the right coast.
yeah,
It's very, very red throughout the central country and around the edges. Go up to Montana. Gee, Montana, that sounds familiar. Nice big place, lots of land. Go to Alaska. There's lots of land.
There was one statistic from the election that really caught my attention, and I think it was the number of counties that were conservative and the number of counties that were liberal.
Yeah.
And I think it was something ungodly, like 90% of the counties were conservative.
I have that percentage here somewhere. I might get to it on the program later today. It's big. It's more than 86%. It's huge.
I just wanted to make mention, you talked about how we're spending ourselves into oblivion. And we've certainly done that here in California. And now it's just sad to see so many good people leaving California. It's just sad. Breaks my heart.
Michael, before you go,
Golden State.
I
Golden State has become the U-Haul ass state.
Yeah, before you go, I want to make a quick comment about that. For years, that I hosted on the local radio station KSCO, and I've looked at a lot of this stuff over the years. Multiple times over the years, California has had budget surpluses, and rather than save them, put them away for the rainy day, adapt to the situation, they've spent the money and always overspent and wound up in budget deficit territory.
Well, a couple of things to keep in mind, Mr. Michael, is that wherever people go, they can still hear that program of ours wherever we reach, is anywhere the internet reaches. So they can take that with them.
I was just thinking about that. What we need to do is an expat show.
Don't we have it basically with Chris Kirby broadcasting through Becky Steinbruner from Oregon?
I think we should do a full-time show about people who have left California.
I see. Well, our Bill Wilverton would probably love to get those ladies together to do just that, just like they did for the programs here. That would be great. Another thing about our budgets and so forth is that if California is exporting PATs, there are people coming back in and bringing those U-Hauls with them because there's new opportunities for them in various fields. So it's balancing out more than we might think. The exodus isn't just one way. And, of course, to the extent we have excess and want to send people away that don't belong here, well, we'll make more room for everybody. I suppose that's still true. Anything else you want to say, Mr. Michael?
Yes. Goodbye.
Well, it's been nice having you. Call again sometime, no matter where you are in this world. So where were we? We're talking about good stuff here and don't want to lose track that the attacks on Trump, really began over a year ago. They use all these ad hominem attacks and so forth, calling him a Nazi and all that. A couple ironics here. The people who are protesting against Dodge and Mr. Musk are spray painting the cars that he made with swastikas. Well, who puts swastikas up? Well, Nazis do, right? So what are they, Nazis? But one of the things they said about him is he was a threat to democracy. Threat to democracy. First of all, we don't have a democracy, thank goodness. But if we did, then aren't these rogue judges a threat to democracy, as you were starting to say, Vernon Bohr? Is that right?
Yeah. I think it's all about winning. It's not about the law, not about justice, as people say. When judges, here's the truth. I haven't read their rulings or the basis for them, but you've also brought up the fact that it's really out of their purview. What would you say? That's not really where they should be operating.
No, they have district courts to handle their district.
Yeah.
And I've found this about federal courts. I didn't practice there, but I went there occasions to testify or to be with a witness. And I learned quickly what I've heard before, and that is each federal court judge at any level runs his court with an iron fist. Whatever he says is the rule. They get used to the idea that they control everything within their purview. The only problem here is they've expanded their purview exponentially out into the universe, literally.
Yeah.
They can't do that, because one thing we could have, two judges fight each other on an issue. Then the Supreme Court would have to rule, right?
Absolutely. So, that is problematic. That's
At least problematic, yeah.
and there again, as a citizen, I don't know that much about the courts and how they operate, but I know a little bit. And as I'm suggesting, when people start weighing in on things that they don't know about and understand, this is the way I look at it. The courts, well, a judge ruled against Trump, and he disobeyed the judge's ruling, he's violating the system. He's going away the system. It's supposed to be separation of powers, and that's the way it gets put out in the press when it's not true, and that undermines the confidence in the legal system.
Right. And to get back to your point much earlier, a very good one, that we, the people, have to know our rights and to express them. The constitutional law is a thorny subject, but there was a Stanford professor, in fact, he was the dean of the law school at Stanford, who wrote a book called The People Themselves. Mm-hmm. And his posit was that each level of government, each branch, has to interpret the Constitution, whether it's the Supreme Court that says they're the ultimate decider, or the legislator who's making laws, or the executive who's carrying them out. They all interpret that same Constitution. But now we add to that the people themselves, okay? Mm-hmm. Because the people are also entitled to read what the founders wrote and to understand it as what it's based on, the rule of law, natural law, the right to be free from all kinds of interference by government, as long as you don't hurt yourself or someone else. That's the kind of attitude that people ought to take. But people are too superficial in their understanding of the workings of law and the nature of legislation, perhaps. But it is taught in the schools. At least we learned it in our basic elementary school upbringing. We would know what the courts are and what they're supposed to do. We knew our history, Washington, Jefferson, all that stuff. And I don't know that's getting taught anymore, but no. They are teaching kids all kinds of stupid things. They know what their pronouns are, but they don't know what it means to be a pronoun.
Well, Jeff, years ago, I was driving back over the hill, listening to a show like this. Someone called in and talked about finance, budgets, and all this. And the thought struck me, I says, Constitution is a pretty simple document, and my limited recollection of it is such that seems to me there's a whole lot of spending going on that's not really authorized by the Constitution. So I looked at it, and my belief is, I'm not the courts, I don't make that decision, is that so much of the spending that's done that's appropriated by the legislature really has no constitutional foundation if you really pushed it to the limits. And so much of it's been passed over the years that we've just gotten used to assuming these guys that we send to Washington have the right to legislate anything they wish in terms of spending. And I don't think that's true.
Theoretically, they shouldn't be allowed to bankrupt the country, for example. That would be beyond their purview. But they are the ones who are the budget managers. They allocate a sum to be applied by the chief executive, the president. And there are budget committees. Most of us find in any organization there are budgets and there are people that don't follow the budget. I mean, it's just a benchmark you sometimes go over, but you really can't overspend. You couldn't do it at home with your checkbook. You can't spend more money than you have. So you budget, you try to put your money toward the things you really need, and the others go sliding. One thing we need now in our country is a better armed and better trained military to confront the situations we face. Probably won't have to face China because they're kind of hurting in many ways too, but there could be a war starting in Europe on a bigger scale that's going on in Ukraine right now. And it would be not just Putin and his Russians on one side, but they'd be joined perhaps by the Chinese, the Iranians, and of course North Koreans, who already have given up their troops. But looking at the big picture, we've been focusing recently on the actions of Trump trying to get rid of the deep state, or at least cut it down. But if you look at the state of California, which Michael was just talking about of people leaving, if you look at the list of agencies in our California, it's more than double the size of the agencies at the federal government. And they have them for everything, like a fishing license or driver training, whatever. Each agency is something on its own.
Here's a question. I got my registration renewal, and my van is a 2005. And normally in the old days, your registration costs would go down over time. Mine have done nothing but gone up since, so that would be 17 years. And I always chuckle is, why would there be a need to register a vehicle unless it changes ownership? Really, they should call it an annual vehicle tax.
Well, it is a tax that way, to call it by its name. But another thing that they're looking at too, and probably to make their lives easier for them, if not us, is when we reach a certain age, we don't have to go back in and get tested to see if we're able to drive a car or not. They'll find out when we run into somebody, I guess.
Well, there's another benefit for getting older, Jeff, that you might not realize.
Which is
you can go through the checkpoint in the airport without taking your shoes off.
I've realized that in the few times I've flown. I actually worked at a point where the shoes were easy to take off and on, slippers basically.
Uh-huh.
But no, I leave them. They say, "Oh, you don't have to take your shoes off." "Oh, thank you, sir." Okay. I don't have to run dressed either. Anyway, no, you don't have to do that.
Now that's a privilege.
Yes.
At that point, does it become a right too?
No, because they can take it away. But it's a good privilege, and it actually saves them time because you're not fiddling with shoes, putting on and off and holding up the line,
Absolutely. Was said in a little frivolity there, Jeff, the whole thing.
I liked frivolity. And I've flown on planes. I flew back when I was visiting my sister in Colorado. It takes 2 days to drive there. But California, I drive. If I go through the trouble of 2 airports and a time up in the sky, not a very long time, but the time on the ground, just getting around. So drive. You have your own car when you get there.
Absolutely. I do that when I go down to Southern California, because by the time you get to the airport, by the time you check in and wait.
Got to park, too.
Yeah. And someone's either got to pick you up. And so by the time you do all that, it's not that much more time to just drive down there. And as you say, you got your car. So that if you get in a fight with your relatives, you can always go home, too.
Yeah. Before we close the show, which will be coming soon enough, but I want to get a couple of news items in because good news is good to have once in a while. The appeals court has okayed stopping USID and firing personnel. In other words, there's a little turnaround with Trump's actions, so he can keep going with USAID because it's not an essential function of government. It's something we do gratuitously, perhaps to help our government, and also it helps other people. The second point is coastal beaches are getting restroom upgrades. If you've driven anywhere along the coast from, say, Davenport on up near San Francisco, there's about 10 different state park beaches along the coast that have these old, dilapidated, smelly, not very well built outhouse type situations, pit toilets basically. And they're going to put up all nice new fresh ones, concrete, and the kind you'd find, say, at Aptos Beach. They have some there that are, concrete types, and very well fitted out with wash basin toilets, so for flush toilets, by the way. So that's good news, I think. But I look at it as the view of a person who travels up and down the coast, and I do camping and I do walking and hikes. It's nice to have a restroom around. And the Gilroy Garlic Festival is returning after 6 years. It's been that long since they had a shooting there. Yeah. A couple of people were killed. And they're only going to allow about 3,000 people in there at a time. But it will be coming up, I think, in May, maybe June. But you can watch for it. But like I said earlier, you don't necessarily find things you need to know in the newspaper. I looked for something about the famous celebrity of the day, Cesar Chavez, and couldn't find anything. Nobody's got anything recommended. There's no parades, no picnics, no anything else. But the other good news, if you're a Republican, is that the Democrat Party is sinking. Now, I said earlier I don't want them to sink because we need to have a good opposition party to keep the Democrats up with the Republicans. And I'm saying, so who else is going to save us? The Libertarians? I don't think so. I might hope so. But what have you got to say before we do this last couple minutes?
I like the Libertarians, but they're so laid back and accepting of everything, staying out of everybody's business, that they don't do much. I'm pretty much aligned probably with what they believe. As far as I'm concerned, if we all behaved ourselves, the country would work just fine. But it doesn't take too many to make a mess for all of us. And that's why we have government, and that's why we fight about it. And it will be that way, I'm sure, long after I'm gone, as it is now. So, but I wish we'd all become more informed about the things we're talking about. However, we all believe that we're all sufficiently informed as it is. And you get a world that looks like it does when we all think we know what's going on.
Well, now we're going to do something that you don't hear on this program or any others, so stand back and listen, because here it goes. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. And that's it for this program, except to ask you, if you will, to come back and join us again next week for more of the same and maybe better. And there are other programs that you can listen to. There's a new one coming up on April 2nd, a brand new one. It's that would be Wednesday at, I think, 1 o'clock. And don't know how that'll turn out. I helped train this young lady to do and be what she thinks she can, just as I got some training when I started this thing out. And I will be with Jim 2 next Friday on his Danger Zone program, as he puts on every Friday at 4 o'clock. And we have Becky Steinbrunner, who does all those wonderful things in the community, on Friday from 2 to 4. So it's a pretty full program. But if you need an extra one in there somewhere, tune in the Noon Balloon on Thursday and hear our friend Mari Segura, who's been selected and trained by good people like us to do what she does there. And she entertains good stories from good people from all around this county. So have a good weekend, enjoy today's celebration, and see us next week. Bye for now.